Welcome to another episode of The Wave, the Wonderful Alberni Valley Experience. My name is Don Tecson and I'm your host today. And with me, I have invited a lovely couple who are actually, from what I know, they have lived all over the world. They've been in so many places, but they've come here to Port Alberni and have settled here and are very happy, living happily ever after in the wonderful Alberni Valley Experience. So without much ado, I'd like to introduce to you Shawn and Rebecca Stanley. Welcome to the show, Shawn and Rebecca. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Don. It's an absolute pleasure.
Okay, let's get started. Before you share your wonderful Alberni Valley experience, because I assume that's what you're having, you are having a wonderful Valley experience. Because one time I was at your cafe, the Full of Beans Cafe, and I could just not help but overhear your very insightful and interesting discussion on different subject matters.
Okay.
We were talking about, I think, well, it was very insightful. I forget, but it was very, I said, this is a group that, doesn't, they're not the ordinary group. Like you talk about things insightfully and interestingly. It's not just the gossip of the town or whatever. It's something insightful and relevant. And I was really attracted to that. And as I said, we have the show. I've been meaning to invite Shawn for the longest time when we were having the taping at Shaw, but now because of conflict of schedule and time and stuff like that, we weren't able to get Shawn on the show. But now Shaw has had to shut down because of the COVID thing, and so we have Zoom, and so it's perfect. Now I can get.
There we go.
Well, actually, this week we're doing a series on couples. I have interviewed another couple already, so you're the second couple in Port Alberni that I'm asking to share their wonderful Alberni Valley experience. So let's start with Shawn first because he is a veteran, a retired veteran, has served our country, has done a tour of Afghanistan for 2 years, I believe, Shawn. So prior to coming to Port Alberni, Shawn, where were you?
Before we came to Port Alberni, we were in Edmonton.
Okay. And you were born in Edmonton or somewhere else?
I was originally born in Victoria.
Okay. Oh, wow.
For me, I've been all over. I lived in Victoria, grew up there, and graduated high school. And I was actually going to apply to the National Theatre School. And,
oh, really?
I had a full ride from the veterans, because my father's a veteran. And then I gave that up, left school, and then moved down to the Caribbean to teach scuba diving.
Oh,
so
wow.
I spent 6 months in the Cayman, 3 months in Fiji, and 3 months in Australia, and then came back, went to Toronto to do my nursing degree, and then came back to Victoria. And the summer that I was done school, I met Rebecca, and a year later we were married. So.
Oh, wow.
All over.
So we'll talk about the love story in a little bit. But how did you end up being, are you in the Army or what branch of the military were you in?
I was in the Army. I was a critical care nursing officer. So I worked in the intensive care unit, emergency. And when in 2005 was my first tour to Afghanistan. And that was the tour where we started in Kabul, which is north. And then halfway through, we moved down to Kandahar, which is in the south, where it's pretty, at the time, pretty hectic part of the country. And the Americans had the hospital that I worked in, the combat hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And so we augmented their nursing staff and did that for the remainder of the tour. And then in 2008, when we lived in Edmonton, I went back when Canada held the international hospital. We worked with multinational and multinational environment, pardon me. And that was 7 months of unbelievable experience.
Oh my goodness. And we'll get to the part when you came back to Port Alberni. So you were from Victoria, you went to Afghanistan for the tour. Did I follow that right?
So we were living in Barrie in 2005 when I went on my first tour. And then in 2008, I got posted to Edmonton.
Okay.
And I went to Afghanistan the second time from Edmonton.
Okay. Now let's go to Becca. What was your path to Port Alberni that crossed with Shawn's?
I kind of tagged along for the ride.
Greg kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
So your starting point was you were born where?
I was born in Southern Ontario.
Okay.
Yeah, so little town called Sarnia. It's about an hour outside of London. It's where my dad grew up. My dad's family lived there, and then my dad was worked for the oil industry. So
Okay.
we moved around quite a lot to different places where he had jobs in the oil industry. And when I was about 10, 11, there was a crash in the oil market. And so my dad lost his job, and my parents decided to become missionaries of all things. So we lived all over, Japan, Singapore, New Zealand.
Missionaries for what religion or what denomination?
It was a non-denominational organization, so all different denominations that came together and worked in the organization. And so we lived in a whole bunch of different places, and then came back to Canada for my last 2 years of high school. So outside of Kelowna. It's called, I think it's called Lake Country now, but it was Winfield when we lived there.
So here's Shawn traveling all over the world as well. You were traveling all over.
Yeah.
And then, so how did your paths cross?
Paths crossed in Victoria. Actually, while I was in university, I went to university in Montreal. While I was in university, my dad decided to go back to university and become a lawyer.
Okay.
I know. So he was accepted to law school at University of Victoria. So when I finished university in Montreal, my parents were living in Victoria. So I came to Victoria to live with them and try to figure out what my next steps were. And that was when Shawn and I met.
And you were studying what?
I studied history and political science in Montreal. And then I went to the University of Victoria and did a 2-year Bachelor of Education degree.
I see. And so currently you are working as?
Currently, I work as nothing related to my education whatsoever. Currently, I am the administrative assistant at the Catholic Church here in Port Alberni.
Okay. Okay, so now we'll go back to Shawn. So you met Rebecca in Victoria. So did I follow right?
Yes. Rebecca was a youth pastor or whatnot at this church, and I wasn't Christian. And a friend of mine, they were doing their church play or whatever for the summer camp, and I doing a lot of theater, a lot of technical, and that I volunteered to give her a hand, doing lights and sets and that type of thing. And then I came across Rebecca, and I was like, wow, all right. It's a funny story. Our very first date in Victoria, we go to Starbucks, grab a coffee, we go up to Mount Pulmy. If anybody knows Victoria, nice view and the whole bit. She looked like she was 15, so I had no idea how old she was. And so I'm like, oh yeah, and she goes, I just graduated. And so I'm like, oh great, from high school, I'm gonna go to jail. And so I said, from what school? Thank goodness I knew that McGill. I'm like, okay, we're good, she's legal, right? So yeah, funny stories.
You weren't sure if she was legal, but you already took her on a date.
Coffee, come on. Oh yeah, it was pretty funny.
So in your case, it's Rebecca who caught your eye.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't the other way around.
I beat her without question.
Okay, there you go. And from there, when you found out she was legal.
It was we were dating for 4 months, and I proposed.
Wow.
So I met her in August, proposed in December, married in May.
Wow.
That's how, in my opinion, that's how you get where you need to be in life. Right?
You just didn't want to give me time to change my mind.
That's right. Get her while you can.
Well,
right?
There you go. Well, you are legal, so.
It's all good.
Yeah. So
did the parents have anything to say on this matter?
It's not up to them.
Okay. Yeah, of course. Yeah, you're legal, so the parents are invited. Were they invited?
That's right. That's right.
It was really interesting though, because Rebecca's family, her mom has a PhD, her father's a lawyer, very much academics, highly educated, and I'm a nurse, right? And so I have some education, but not nearly to the same level. My family, my mom's a nurse, my dad's a military veteran, and they're, blue collar. And so it was the first meeting we had of the families that went out for dinner. I was like, oh my God, how is this going to go? And, but the thing is that it's you and your spouse. If your families get along, great. If they don't, that's okay. You know, it's about you and your.
It's between the two of you.
Yeah.
That's the biblical principle. The man will leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. There's
Right.
nothing in there for the in-laws.
No room for the in-laws. Well, and we were lucky in the sense, like, I mean, in some ways not so lucky, but lucky in the sense that we, you know, when Shawn joined the military and we moved, we were never around our families, and so there's certainly drawbacks to that.
Like
but
free childcare.
But we never, the bonus is we never had to worry about too much about those kinds of conflicts and relationships. There was never an expectation that we would show up for Sunday dinners or anything like that, right? So
the best part about that, though, from our standpoint, or from my standpoint, is those first 5 years were tough, of course, right? As you're discovering each other, we didn't know each other for a long time before we got married, and we're across the country. It's Rebecca and me, and then when I joined the military, we were apart for a year, and with training and language training and everything else, and then we get together and we're figuring it out, right? And for better or for worse, we 23 years later, we're still together. So
23, did I hear that right? 23.
We just had our 22nd anniversary.
So we're working on 23.
So yeah.
Congratulations. That is rare nowadays.
Yeah,
wonderful adventure, right? So
that is one word for it.
Because we are limited to 30 minutes, but I can go exceed some more. Let's get to how you came to Port Alberni. So you came to Port Alberni as a couple already, right?
Yes.
You're already together. You've been married for how many years before you came to Port Alberni?
Oh, we'd been here 7 years. So we would have been married 15 years.
Yeah, 15, 16,
Yeah. So Shawn was medically released from the military in 2013 because he was diagnosed with PTSD from time in Afghanistan. And so he, floundered a little bit at first, as lots of veterans do when they first leave the military. They're trying to find their place.
Their way back.
And figure out where they fit and what they're going to kind of do with the rest of their lives. And so he knew that he had said at some point he wanted to come back to we knew at some point we'd come back to the island. I wasn't expecting it to be quite that quick, but there was a job that came up at West Coast General Hospital, managing the ICU and the CCU. ICU and the emergency department. And so he applied for that and was successful in getting it. So that's what brought us here was that job.
Okay.
The job didn't last. It wasn't a good fit. But I said, I'm not going, this is it. I'm not moving again. So you got to figure something out because I'm not leaving.
So what was your impression of Port Alberni when you got here? Have you ever been to Port Alberni prior to that time?
I lived here as a kid for a couple of years, for 4 years. And then the strike happened in 1980 and we moved to Victoria. So I knew Port Alberni. I grew up at the lake and stuff. So yeah, I had been here before, and now Rebecca comes here, and
I said we drove in for the military gives you a house hunting trip. So they send you out for a week to find a home. And so we had come out on our house hunting trip, and we drove in and came down Johnston. I said, oh, there's a Starbucks. I can live here.
Was that your first criteria?
Yeah.
What is the first thing on? It's a good thing Starbucks was here already.
Right?
So, but you, were you like, when you said you went on your house hunting trip, there were other options. You could have gone to Parksville or Qualicum, or were you already set on going to Port Alberni then?
Pretty much, in that the idea of, I knew the housing prices here were a lot less. We could get more home than what we could. And I liked the idea of being here, and where we currently live, I can walk to the hospital in 5 minutes. And that was the idea. We looked around and through a buddy, got a hold of Dave Ralla, and he was phenomenal, and got us set up with a couple places, and this is the one we picked, right? So yeah, I didn't want to be out in Beaver Creek or out in the boonies. I wanted to be close to where I could work and close to the amenities. But to be realistic, after coming from Toronto and Edmonton, anything in Port Alberni is close. 5 minutes, right? So,
oh yeah, that's for sure.
You got to put it into perspective, right? So yeah, we're happy with it. It's a nice place to raise your kids.
Yes, I heard you say that one time, and that's what caught my attention. You said you're one of the few people who say that it's a nice place to raise your kids. Can you tell me more about that view?
So I think just it has that small town feel. Growing up and moving all over the place, I never had that experience of growing up with the same kids and going to, having my best friend and my social group and going to school with them and growing up with them. So being able to provide that for my kids has been really nice. Like Ella especially. Because we moved here when she was 4, so she's gone to preschool and kindergarten and grade school with the same group of kids, and has formed really, and Jonathan and Michael too have formed really close friendships, and the fact that the town is so, like, the distances are so short between things, the kids have been able to be involved in all kinds of activities that we never would have been able to have them do when we lived in Edmonton. Swimming lessons took 3 hours of the night because it was a half an hour drive to the pool and change and half-hour lesson and then get out and change and then a half an hour to drive home. And so Ella, I think there was, the first couple of years we lived here, Ella was involved in she was in Weekly, she was in stages, she was in 2 dance classes a week, and she was in swimming lessons. So my 5-year-old was more scheduled than I was, but it's very affordable.
That's a big thing too.
The activities are very affordable and it's easy to access them. So the kids really have their, they have their pick as far as what they, what their interests are, what they want to be involved in.
Like when we were in Edmonton, it wasn't bad on base. Some of the activities on base, we lived on the base, but they'd have their one activity because of the logistics and the cost. And so here in Port Alberni, because the economy can't sustain what Edmonton does, activities are reasonable. So if you have a professional job or a professional pension, you're very, very fortunate in this town and can provide nicely for your family. So from my standpoint, that's very important. And yeah, so my pension goes a heck of a lot farther here than it would in Victoria, right?
Well, that's for sure. And I love the people here, and surrounded by the mountains, and we have an ocean, we have an inlet, we have falls, we have lakes, we have rivers and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But what would you consider as your highlight in your wonderful Alberni Valley experience? Of course, the family is number one, definitely. What else? Because I understand. So is Ella also involved with theater productions? Because you said you mentioned stages.
Yeah, she was. She hasn't been the last couple of years. She's been focusing on dance.
Okay.
But she was part of stages and for several years.
Oh, I see. Because I'm trying to recall if she was involved in Mamma Mia.
No. She would love to. I mean, if the theater did another production like Wizard of Oz, she'd be all over that. But they haven't done anything recently where there's been a spot for someone her age. So we keep looking. She keeps crossing her fingers and hoping it'll come.
Well, Shawn has been involved in a couple of productions. The Foreigner, that's where I first saw Shawn. In The Foreigner, that was a great play. Yeah. Actually, it was the first play I ever watched here in Port Alberni when I moved here. Was The Foreigner, because I was a member of the C Notes, and Janet Schlackel was telling us about The Foreigner, and one of our members, Nathan Satterley, was in The Foreigner.
Yeah. Yes.
And so I got curious. I said, oh, they have productions here. So I went to see it, and I saw Shawn, I saw Belinda, I saw Nathan, and the other cast. It was a great show. And Terry Fisher, right?
Yeah.
I already knew them. Like, Terry's a good friend of mine, so I gotta see the play, and that's what I saw. Shawn, it was a great play. And soon after, I got cast with Michael.
Yes.
Michael, your son, in The Actor's Nightmare. How about you, Rebecca? Have you been involved in stage plays and theater?
I haven't. No, I'm the shy one in the family. I support from behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. Now,
Portal players there, Don. I was really surprised because my impression coming to a mill hick town, that was what I had coming to Port Alberni. And then I saw they had a theater. And so I said to Rebecca that I hadn't done theater in a number of years since I've been in the military, right? Because we've been around so much and you could get deployed and you can't commit. And so I said, I'm going to audition for whatever it is. I don't know a soul. And it was Wizard of Oz. And so I got in and next thing I know 60 people. And it was like, wow, this is a vibrant community. And I was like, this is great. And that's how I got to know the folks at Port au Players. And then did Seussical the next year and, just kind of helped out where I could.
Okay, so The Foreigner was not your first rodeo, I guess.
No. And I've done lots of theater before too. And so
there you go.
Both behind the scenes and on stage. And it was good fun. I really enjoyed it, right? So.
And you also used to run a little cafe around town near my place. I loved it. I loved your salads and soups. And there was this scone. The scone, I really loved that, the zucchini scone.
Oh,
that was so good.
Spinach Parmesan.
Oh, yeah, that one. And it was so delicious.
Oh, thank you.
What made you come up with that concept? Like, what made you go into that business?
Originally, it was because I was visiting friends of mine in the States, just myself and the kids, and it was ridiculously hot. And so we didn't want to go to the park to play. They didn't want to be outside. It was so hot. And I couldn't find a McDonald's or a Burger King that had a playland. And I mentioned something to my friend, and she said, well, yeah, that's because of the fear of lawsuits. So the insurance is too expensive, and so most of them can't afford to open a place. But I ended up Googling, I don't even remember what I Googled, but I found something similar to our concept at Full of Beans, where it was a coffee shop and indoor play place, and lots of parents would come and have their laptops or their books or whatever and sit and read or sit and do their work and let the kids play. And so I took my kids and they had so much fun, and I thought this is perfect for military spouses because we would spend so much time on our own when our spouses were deployed or on training or somewhere else, and always trying to find things to keep the kids busy.
In minus 40 in Edmonton.
Yeah, especially they're really small and it's too cold to be outside. And, so we would go to McDonald's or we would go to Burger King and we would sit there for 4 hours and drink really bad coffee or eat food that wasn't very good for us, just so that the kids could play and have something to do. And it didn't transpire while we were in Edmonton, but the idea was still in the back of my head. And when we decided that we were moving to Port Alberni, I had looked to see if there was anything like that. And there wasn't. There used to be was on Bird Street, Bugaloo Bears or something it was called, and was closed before we moved here. And
I see.
So it was kind of always in the back of my head, and was something we looked at some different properties when, within the first couple of years of moving, and didn't find anything that was the right fit. And then we just 2016, we just kind of decided it was the right time. Ended up finding that place there on Argyle, and I was really I was passionate about opening something uptown and trying to be a part of revitalizing the uptown area. And so we ended up finding that property and being able to make it work, and it was wonderful. That was probably the highlight so far of being in the Alberni Valley, was being able to be a part of lots of different families' lives and meeting their kids and seeing them grow up, seeing their families expand. It was a lot of fun. We really enjoyed it.
How long did that last? Like how many years?
We were open just over 3 years, so 3.5 years.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. We were kind of, I think it's just timing, right? Yeah. It was, we were starting to turn the corner, and then the strike happened. And that kind of started to hit us hard. And we were able to, said that we were going to close, and we were trying to kind of sell things piece by piece. And then we had somebody step in and say they were interested in purchasing the whole business as it was. So that. And
then the COVID thing hit.
And then the COVID thing hit.
We're very fortunate
in time.
Right? Yeah. We couldn't have asked for better timing as far as that was concerned.
Well, and the new owner wants to keep the play area and keep it available for families, which is wonderful, right? So even though it's not us, they're keeping the name, they're keeping everything. So, and they're going to do whatever they want for its menu and stuff. But so families can still enjoy it, and that's So that's nice. We have a legacy at least for family.
Yeah, it's a continuation of your legacy, which is a wonderful legacy.
Yeah.
We're out of time, so I would just like you to highlight your wonderful Alberni Valley experience. What would be the highlight as far as you're concerned? Living here for 7 years now?
We've been here 7 years.
Okay.
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, having the cafe and just being a part of the community in that way is probably the highlight for me.
For me, the hidden jewel in this town is the high school.
Yeah, I heard about that.
The teachers are phenomenal. My one son, well, they're all in music, but my one son is going to be a professional musician, Jonathan, and the band teachers are unbelievable. Mr. Gauthier and Mr. Kynock are phenomenal, and they're all good that we've had experiences with them at the high school level, the teachers. And so
I must interview them one of these days.
Yes, you should.
You know, a big shout out to them. Because they're doing so much hard work right now for all, and we have kids for all the kids. So the teachers in this town are doing great, and that high school is a phenomenal facility. So.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, there you go. Thank you for being on the show, Rebecca and Shawn. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Don.
And I had such a wonderful time. I could talk forever because the wonderful Alberni Valley experience is continuous, regardless of the tsunami, the mill strike, the forest fires.
We'll have to get together and do some karaoke, Don.
Yeah, we should. They're trying to work on a virtual karaoke system.
There you go.
And last week I interviewed Teresa Ludvigsen of the Alberni Hospice Society, and we missed out on the gala. That's the event of the year for May. It was supposed to be on May the 8th, and they already, even before they started promoting the event, the tickets were already half sold. There were 200 tickets available. 100 tickets were already sold sometime in February or March. Then suddenly the COVID hit, so they had to refund the tickets and cancel the gala. But they are working on a virtual gala.
Okay.
So when I interviewed Teresa, we were dressed up in our gala outfits. Like
awesome.
I just posted it on Facebook.
Who had the better dress, man?
Sorry?
Who had the better dress?
Well, I'll let you be the judge.
Okay.
Go to our Facebook page and watch the interview, and please do subscribe to our YouTube channel called The Wave TV, which is all about Port Alberni. Because the reason I put up the show is, I've heard too much negative things about Port Alberni, and I'm sick of it. Like, why should the negative voice be the louder voice? I have a loud voice, and it's going to be a positive voice. Absolutely. And it's a voice that should always say, welcome to the wonderful Alberni Valley experience. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you next time on The Wave.